Hi, this is Lexi Hughes reporting from JTAC News. I went around Tarleton asking the students how they feel about the Ferguson case and how they feel about the trial. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
Well, I do think that he did, in the end, no matter how you look at it, he did take away a human life that was not necessarily, going to do him any harm. Like, even though, they say that he might have threatened him, he didn't have a gun on hand and he was only 16 years old. So I do think that, Darren Wilson, I do think that he was kind of maybe a bit immature or maybe a bit young. I don't think he should have shot for the head. I think instead of being intimidated, that he should have maybe shot a leg or or tasered him or done something else besides just automatically going for the kill. That shows a lot of inexperience, and maybe he shouldn't be on the law force if that's his automatic reaction. I don't think that he's completely can just kind of get away with it. I don't know if necessarily as big of a race issue. I don't think he necessarily shot him because necessarily he was black, but I do think that it kind of might have put a subconscious kind of effect on that growing fear that he had. And then I also think that he should have gotten something, some kind of penalty for it, because in the end he did take away an innocent human life.
How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
I think the decision they came to was a proper decision, even though I personally do not feel good about it. I think we have to respect that the decision that justice eventually comes to, even though emotionally for not only me personally but other people in the Ferguson community across the United States, it was not a very good emotional experience to have, especially for the family. And I don't think it was necessarily fair, morally fair, but it's what they came to in conclusion.
Okay, thank you. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
I feel like it was kind of unnecessary in that, as said, he was just defending himself, and you can't really attack a police officer no matter what color you are.
Okay. How do you feel about him being innocent in the Ferguson case?
I feel like that's rightfully so, considering that he got attacked, and he was just acting in self-defense, and then the law applies. It was self-defense.
Thank you for your answers. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
To be honest with you, I really think that he was kind of unjustly hated on by people and everything like that. And I think honestly, just because it's a racial-based thing, I would think a lot of people blew it out of proportion. I think he was just doing his job, and I completely recommend him for it.
Okay. How do you feel about him being innocent in the case?
I completely agree with it, to be honest. I really think that, like I said, I think a lot of people were just really, really upset just because there's a white cop shot a black kid. And, honestly, if it was any other way, I don't think anybody else would have a problem with it. And so, in my opinion, I think he's completely innocent. And I just feel bad for him having to deal with that now with all the problems that he gets.
Okay. So. Thank you for your time. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
I feel he was justified in shooting in self-defense. If he was authorized to pull his weapon and was assaulted, why not? He's got to stop a threat, and they're out there to protect and serve, and he was doing his job, and Michael Brown wasn't listening and wound up dead.
Okay. How do you feel about him being innocent in the case?
Criminal justice system's put in place for a reason. Obviously, a grand jury found enough evidence to say there was not enough sufficient grounds to indict him on even unintentional manslaughter, and they were looking at 4 different levels of conviction, and none of them found enough probable cause to indict, so clearly he was obviously acting in self-defense. And I believe in the system, and let them riot if they don't like the system, but that's the way it is.
Thank you for your time and your answers. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
Well, I think it's sad that Michael Brown had to die the way he did, but the way that the citizens of Ferguson reacted was illogical, and it's not going to change anything for the better for the citizens of Ferguson or any citizens around the nation.
Okay. How do you feel about Darren Wilson being innocent in this case?
I feel like under the circumstances and the facts that have come out to the public that it was justifiable homicide, therefore he was defending his own life.
Okay. Thank you. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
Well, I don't really know a whole lot about it. I do know that we have a legal system for a reason, and the legal system, whether or not it works in the eyes of the public, is there for the reason that it is, and so whether or not it works or whether or not it doesn't, it's the best one anywhere in the world. So.
Okay. How do you feel about Darren Wilson being innocent in the Ferguson case?
I think a staunch point to look at is that he was found not guilty, but from what I do know of it, if you look at like the evidence that was presented and everything, I mean, I'm not a juror or anything like that, but in all honesty, they found what they found, and that's the decision they made. I mean, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. Everybody can have their opinion, but in the end, that's what happened. So,
Thank you for your time. How do you feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
I feel that some people are overreacting to it, especially all the citizens in Ferguson. Both sides have been explained, so they just need to pick a side and they need to think about like the ways that the other side is thinking. Both sides are overreacting, and it needs to calm down.
How do you feel about Darren Wilson being innocent in the Ferguson case?
That's hard to answer. He was innocent because of the police report that he wrote, and but the eyewitness reports say something completely different from what all the police reports were saying. So it's very controversial whether he was innocent or not. We're not going to know the full story, but if he is, he is. If he's not, he got off.
Thank you for your answers. How do y'all feel about the Darren Wilson case in Ferguson?
Man, I feel like it's appalling. It's sad that our justice system can allow a police officer to get away with something that I consider to be a hate crime, and it just saddens me that so many people will support the officer after his innocent verdict.
What about you?
It's interesting. I don't even know if I want to.
Go for it.
I just think it's interesting. I just don't.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it.
Okay. How do you feel about Darren Wilson being innocent in this case?
I think it's insane. Obviously, he murdered a young man, and I don't think that the size of the kid or his ethnicity or like any of the factors that played into him being innocent are just completely unfair. I feel like the jury, I feel like it should be retried. You know, it's sad, and riots are happening because of it, and more people are going to die because of it. And it's deeper than just that one case. It goes back over decades of African Americans being treated without equality, and it's just one injustice that we have to suffer on a day-to-day basis.